Well, today we're going to look at fragrant orchids, and I've got two of them in front of me here. This is the Chalk Fragrant Orchid, Gymnadenia conopsea. Now, Gymnadenia, the fragrant orchids, have a reputation for being rather difficult to split apart into species. In fact, they used to be subspecies, and that tells you that the differences are going to be quite subtle. And the differences between the three subspecies of Gymnadenia, the fragrant orchids, are small indeed. And in fact, without one of these, which is a graduated loop, and using this I can measure down easily to 1/10 of a millimetre, one's going to struggle to tell them apart. So let's look first of all at their overall characters. Well, the first thing is that they smell. Yes, very nice. I have no sense of smell, and even I can smell those. The smell is supposed to be subtly different between the different species. The marsh fragrant orchid, Gymnadenia borealis, no, it's Gymnadenia densiflora, I'll get it right in a moment, is supposed to smell of carnations. Well, I have to tell you, they all smell the same to me. But they all share the same general characters. Bright green stem, bright green, rather narrow leaves, clasping the stem on the way up, maybe 3 or 4 leaves. They flower in July. It's now quite late in July, so they're doing very well here. And the flowers all have the same structure. They have a labellum at the base with 3 divisions and 2 side petals which stick out sideways. Now, in the marsh fragrant orchid, they're supposed to be absolutely out sideways, dead straight, and in the chalk fragrant orchid, they're supposed to be down a little bit, rather like a fighter jet's wings. It's a pretty subtle difference, and it doesn't always work. And really the only sensible way of telling one from the other, as I say, is to use a loop and to measure the parts. You measure the width of the labellum. That's the bottom lip, and if it's around about, less than around about, say, 6.5 millimetres, then it's likely to be the chalk fragrant orchid, because the marsh fragrant orchid is rather bigger in all its parts. The side petals are also longer in marsh fragrant orchid, but you do need to be able to measure them with a loop or a very smart ruler to be able to measure them down to about 1 millimetre or so. They're surprisingly common. As the name implies, they have different habitats. Chalk fragrant orchid, Gymnadenia conopsea, and is limestone, a chalk plant, and of course the marsh fragrant orchid that grows in boggy places. We won't worry about the third one. Conopsea. Conopsea is from the Greek konops, which means mosquito, and I suppose they do look a bit like mosquitoes. If you pull the flowers off, and I'm not going to, you'll see they have a very long spur on the back. And if you can hear me over the aeroplane which is flying overhead, it's not a mosquito, I think it's a Cessna 172. If you look at the back of the flower, you'll see it's got a very long spur, and presumably the nectar is down at the end of the spur, so you have to have a very long tongue if you're an insect feeding off fragrant orchids. So, 2 quite nice examples of the chalk fragrant orchid, Gymnadenia conopsea.